In this video, we talk about the tolerance to be stuck in relationship and where that comes from. Stay tuned. Welcome to The New Love Addiction. I'm Alan Robarge, a relationship coach and a psychotherapist. And let's talk about moving on, and very specifically for some of us, why we cannot move on. And when we find ourselves unable to exit a relationship, we might go through a prolonged period of time of feeling stuck and then also preoccupied about how to get unstuck. So on this video, let's talk about some ideas that might be operating here, perhaps not operating for everyone, but it's very possible, specifically from the point of view of an attachment injury and coming from a family where in your history, in your childhood, with your primary caregivers, with your parents, it could also be with other family members, but mostly with your parents, if there was a situation over an extended period of time while growing up where you were stuck in your family, or you were stuck in a way where your emotional needs, your attachment needs were not being met, and perhaps there were distractions going on in the family home, such as tension, such as anxiety, walking on eggshells. Perhaps someone had an active addiction that is influencing, pulling attention away from actual relating and instead taking care of the stress and the tension and the dysfunction around the addiction that's happening. Also, it could be if a family member is distracted just because of, let's say, for financial reasons, a parent who works frequently, or a parent who is working so hard to try to keep the household together. Nonetheless, the children are going to notice a distance and a distancing and an unavailability, and fewer moments, fewer opportunities for emotional connection and mirroring and investment and warmth in ways that the child would not feel seen, known, heard, and understood. And when this happens over a period of time, we could say developmentally, emotionally, this child has experienced a series of attachment injuries, and we could then just group those all together and make it a plural, or excuse me, the singular form of, just instead of saying multiple attachment injuries, we just say, there's an attachment injury from childhood. It's a kind of placeholder acknowledging all of these missed opportunities, some of them very significant, some of them on the surface appearing somewhat minor, but collectively when they add up, they have impacted this child's nervous system, this child who's now an adult. They have impacted a person's template in their mind, how the brain is mapped to be in relationship. And if we're looking at this template, if we're looking at how a person is in relationship, we were trained, if you came from a family where there was some aspect of being ignored, neglected, abused, betrayed, abandoned, in any multiple scenarios or degrees, but collectively, if it impacted your development and particularly impacted your brain's mapping of a relationship template, which we more would refer to as your attachment style. If your attachment style has been impacted and influenced by an attachment injury, then oftentimes what this means is you have been trained to stay in a relationship that is dysfunctional and healthy. So there is a logic to that. Just hear the logic that we know, we do what we know, we do what is familiar. Familiar means of the family. And so if you grew up in a home where there is a certain consistent inability to have emotional needs met, then the template in your mind, your relationship style, you are going to have a very high tolerance to be in relationship with someone who offers very little emotional attunement, emotional connection, emotional harmony, emotional mirroring, emotional warmth, emotional presence. That is what you know. That is normal. However, this is really challenging because in the event that you're in a relationship and over time you realize this is not fulfilling and you need to move on, it's very easy to get stuck in relationship. And one reason why many of us cannot move on is because we have, one, been trained to stay, and also we have this incredible tolerance to endure not getting our needs met. So this creates an inner conflict. You will have some awareness or some consciousness, usually driven by suffering and pain. You will know, you will be in pain internally to say, this relationship is disappointing. The person that I'm with is not connecting with me. It has run its course. The relationship has run its course. It is time to end. So you have that part of yourself, that part of clarity, that part that wants to take action and move forward. But simultaneously, you're going to bump up against this other part, these other beliefs. It's going to be coded into how your brain is mapped and how you orient to relationships, that you just stay no matter what. That is what you were trained to do. So you have these two parts of yourself. Now they're in conflict, that you are holding true to the old attachment style, the old attachment system, the old way of being in relationship is to accept and endure. Ultimately, from the child's point of view, it means to be dependent upon. The child just was dependent on that scenario, dependent for survival, to stay in that dysfunctional system. So that's what we bring into our adult relating, is that we maintain a dependency to this dysfunctional relating. So again, to repeat, I have these two parts. The part of me that has some clarity that I need to leave, and then the other part of me that says, well, just make it work no matter what, and let's just stay, and I'm not moving on. When we err on the side of not taking action to follow through with exiting the relationship and being able to endure and overcome the obstacles and the fears of actually leaving. Every time I convince myself to stay, I am denying my reality. I'm denying that part of me that says this is not working, this is painful, this is hurtful, this is not healthy. Every time that I try to override that reality, what's happening is I am betraying myself. And if I continue to betray myself multiple times, I'm going to lose my sense of self. I'm not here. People report feeling like a shell of themselves. Another phrase that applies here is that my spirit is lost. I don't even have my spirit about me. I've lost my soul. I'm just a shell of a person showing up in relationship here, but I have lost my connection to my to life force. When we betray ourselves enough by trying to stay committed to being in a dysfunctional situation of staying stuck, which is how we were trained in our family, to have a tolerance for this very low-level emotional connection, to have a tolerance for people who are emotionally absent, to have a tolerance for accepting crumbs, emotional crumbs, relational crumbs, to not have a full, nourishing meal of emotional attunement. We were trained, we are now tolerant, and when we do this enough, when we continue to override the part of ourselves that has some clarity that says, this is unhealthy for me, this is not working for me, and yet I stay because I have an allegiance to my tolerance, I'm betraying myself. And I become a shell of a person, and I override my truth, and I disconnect from agency and will and the ability to take action. I disconnect from my wherewithal to make something change. We are talking about a trauma. We are talking about an attachment trauma. And there's such thing as a phrase called trauma reenactment. And this whole scenario, everything I've described so far up to this point, we could use as an example to say this is trauma reenactment. We are playing out the same old pattern in such a way that is perpetuating the wounding. And not only are we experiencing a wounding with our significant other through not being nourished and enduring the experience of a lack of emotional connection, but we're doing it to ourselves. This is a form of trauma reenactment where I have internalized this behavior, and the same way that the people I was in relationship with in my family growing up and how there was not emotional connection, essentially what I'm doing to myself as an adult is I also am disconnecting from taking care of myself. I'm disconnecting from giving myself the emotional nourishing, the emotional nurturing that I need to take care of myself. And in this instance, in this case, taking care of myself means really being honest with myself and saying, I am stuck in a relationship that is not working. I do not see it creating any sense of repair. There's no way I can create repair here if I'm not even present anymore. I'm not even a self. I don't even have connection to my spirit or my soul or to my life force. I am so depleted, and I am just stuck here going through the motions. I do not want to be in this relationship, and yet I am stuck and cannot move forward. Oh, I can imagine if you're listening to this, if you're in this situation, I can imagine your pain, and or if you're listening to this video, we can all just slow down and take a moment to realize how incredibly hurtful, incredibly painful. This is for so many people. I have some personal history and personal experience, so I know what it is like to lose your spirit and lose your sense of self in relationship. And I also know what it's like to be stuck and not have any connection. It's like you're in the car, you might even have the keys to the car, but there's no gas. There is just no, or let's say we have an electric car. There's no electricity in the car. There's just no fuel that you're able to engage. One reason why this is, if we're looking at this from the point of view, from the perspective of trauma, and we're looking at this from the point of view of attachment trauma, is that when the trauma mind is activated, we are disconnected from our inner resource. And one inner resource that we very definitely need is this inner resource of fuel, electricity, energy. A better way of saying it from a psychological standpoint is to assert your will. Also psychologically, it's referred to as having agency. If I have agency, I know what I am capable of. If I have agency, I'm able to trust that I can move my life forward or move a situation forward. When we are activated in trauma mind, when we are perpetually stuck in this trauma reenactment of a scenario where we are being denied emotional nurturing and emotional nourishment, we do not have agency, which speaks to why it is so challenging to leave. we don't have a self. If you're disconnected from yourself, you don't have a self. How can you leave? There's no self to leave. I'm not able to internally orient, to internally solidify around my strong sense of self and then move forward to take care of that self. My sense of self in those moments are so lost and fragmented that I am unable to pull myself together, connect to the electricity, to the energy, to the resource, to the will, to the agency, and actually take a step forward to move beyond the trauma reenactment. So when I'm working with clients, and what I have noticed over the years is that a number of clients need to really think about this word tolerance and intolerance. And it's slightly funny because, mostly collectively or culturally we think of having intolerance as not much of a virtue. But in this scenario, it's actually really, really helpful. We need to be intolerant of receiving emotional crumbs. We need to be intolerant of convincing ourselves to stay in a situation that is repeatedly hurtful to us. We need to be intolerant to feeling the absence, the continued absence of emotional disconnect. So we're trying to recalibrate. We're trying to change the calibration so that if I have this incredible tolerance for non-emotional connection, non-emotional attunement, I'm trying to change the dial. And one way to do that is to really think in terms of being intolerant. Another way to do this has to do with boundaries, to think about what are boundaries. Boundaries, very simplistically, it's a way for me to know where I end and where you begin. So it does have some conscious awareness of space, but it also has to do with asserting a sense of self. So there's a physical space around me. It's like a force field. And so I have boundaries. This is my personal space. Another person has personal space. And in that sense, we know where do I end and where does the other person begin. And we're really looking at how do I maintain that sense of self. However, boundaries also mean internally. What's happening for me internally? Boundaries around my thoughts, boundaries around my emotions, boundaries around my spiritual desires, my spiritual learnings, or spiritual yearnings. And what this means is I can affirm my preferences. And preferences are simply, I like this, I don't like that. And when we can do preference work, when we can continue to affirm, yes, I like this, no, I don't like this, that is a way of strengthening our sense of self. Because each time I'm consciously acknowledging if I like something or don't like something, and I'm allowing myself to have ownership of that preference, I'm strengthening my sense of self. I'm affirming my sense of self. So again, one way to work with being a shell of a person in a relationship where you're stuck and you've lost connection with your spirit and your life force is to look at your relationship to tolerance and practice more intolerance to these moments and these situations where you are being denied emotional connection. Number two, we're going to look at boundaries. You want to strengthen your internal boundaries, and you can do this to begin by focusing on what are your preferences, what do you like and what don't you like. This affirms your sense of self because you're trying to strengthen a sense of self so that you can begin to activate and find a link, find a bridge to your inner resource because you're disconnected from resource. I also want to share an idea about this phrase bridge. So losing inner resource when we are activated in an attachment trauma is going to feel sometimes confusing and bizarre because when we are in our adult wisdom self, when we are in our current adult self, And let's take an example of at work. Many people in their job, in their work life, are able to hold a sense of presence. They are able to hold a sense of responsibility. They are able to speak up and speak their mind and say, yes, I like this project. No, I don't like this project. Or if perhaps they work with clients, they're in industry where they talk to other people, they're able to be very direct with the client and say, yes, I hear your concern, I hear your problem, let's get right on top of it and take care of that. Or they're able to go to the client and have a difficult conversation and say, there was something wrong with the billing, we need to adjust the numbers, oops, we're going to charge you an extra $1,000. Whatever the scenario, these are examples where when we are in other realms, so not the interpersonal realm, not the relationship realm, not the family realm, but when we're in the work realm, when we are in the community realm, when we are in the spiritual realm, when we are in a friendship realm, which sometimes the friendship realm might be a little iffy, we will notice we have resource, we have this inner capacity to actually have a presence. We can feel connected to our sense of self. So the word here, the technique piece, the teaching piece, the tool, the tip that I'm giving is this word bridge. We want to try, we know what it's like when we are imploded, when we are imploded into our lack of resource. What we need to do is review our life on a regular basis. Review, where do I actually feel some resource? Where do I feel empowered? Where do I feel connected to my spirit? And the example that I just gave is, let's call it work. So let's imagine that there is some area of your life, and again, let's pretend it's work, that I am able to feel some sense of agency, some sense of healthy pride, some sense of skill, where I am able to assert myself and I'm able to let in influence and I'm in relationship with my coworkers and I'm doing my job well. So the idea of this tool is we want to really think about that scenario. We want to try to conjure up the feeling that we have, that feeling of agency, of wherewithal, of the ability to move something forward. And when we can cultivate and feel that feeling, it's going to be a felt sense in your body. You're just going to feel a sense of perhaps power. It might feel like a sense of strength. There's other words here too. A word that I like is warriorship, a warrior, to feel like a warrior. And I don't mean it in the sense of revenge or aggression. It's more in the idea of a gentle warrior, but someone who is able to very clearly have the ability to protect oneself and in the spirit of a warrior move out and make something happen, to protect, if we're using mythological terms in mythology, to say to protect the kingdom. The warrior can move forward and take action and protect the kingdom. So if we have these moments, they might be fleeting, they might be few, they might not be in all areas of your life, but we're trying to find, you are not in activated trauma mind all the time. It's just not impossible, it's just not possible. I suppose anything's possible. I can't, perhaps someone's living, 24/7, 100% of the time in trauma state. But my training, any number of modalities that I've been introduced to is that we have what are called these gaps, and I've also learned them to be phrased these islands of clarity. There's going to be a time when your mind softens, when the clouds part, when the sunshine comes through. There's going to be this island of clarity, and there's going to be a gap in the activated trauma mind. And you are not going to be under the influence and in a confused state of this trauma reenactment. You're either going to feel neutral, or you might be able to feel what I'm suggesting, this sense of strength and power. And you're beginning to notice, you're bringing awareness and sensitivity to notice these gaps and notice these islands of clarity. And we then inventory them. We then remind ourselves, oh yes, last Tuesday, I remember at that meeting at work, I felt confident. So the bridge here is we take that feeling of confidence and we say, can I link it? Can I bridge that to how I feel stuck in my current relationship? And oftentimes, many of us are going to say, no, I can't do that. I cannot feel that transformation or that linking. I cannot feel making the transition over the bridge. It's a very literal image here. I'm going over the bridge from this place of confidence. Can I bring confidence to the part of me that feels disempowered and shut down and stuck in this relationship? Many of us early on are going to say, no, I can't do that because we're so disconnected. But we keep practicing this, begin to inventory what are these other resources that you do have in other areas of your life. One last example of a resource that many people can pull from has to do with their spiritual connection, their spiritual practice. If they identify in some capacity of being religious or linked to a particular practice of a religion, or for some people it's their relationship to God. And there are many words that we could use here for God: relationship to great Holy Spirit, relationship to the great divine, relationship to the power of nature, and the power of being connected to something bigger than who we are. So if you have moments where you're feeling and experiencing a divinely inspired strength, you can use that as a bridge also. That is a resource. You are tapping into the resource of your spiritual connection. So you can, again, very literally, very visually think of a bridge, and you're going to bring that spiritual connection, the strength that you feel in the warmth, in the positivity, in the power of your connection to God, to your connection to divine presence, your connection to Holy Spirit, whatever it is. If you can take that and you imagine, well, I know I feel when I'm at my church, I know I feel uplifted. When I'm praying, I know I feel uplifted. When I'm going for a walk and I'm in nature and I'm moved through inspiration and awe and I feel a transcendent moment where I'm connected to life bigger than myself and bigger than my own little problems and my own little relationship. What we do is we tap into that resource and we try to bridge it to the parts of ourselves that feel disconnected. Initially, this might be a bit more of an intellectual exercise as opposed to a feeling-based exercise. You might be so shut down that what I'm saying is just a fancy idea, and when you actually go to do it, you feel nothing, and it's even more confusing because you're like, well, I don't feel anything. I don't know what to do here. Give yourself time, give yourself patience, and practice it 3 or 4 times. Practice it for 2 or 3 weeks and write it down in a journal. And even if you don't feel different, set the intention, set the awareness to open, to be able to link where you do have resource in your life, to bridge it and bring it to those places where you're shut down and you have no resource. The last thing I want to talk about in all of this experience, one way to get unstuck when we are caught in feeling tolerant and behaving from a historical tolerance to not being connected with through emotional attunement. We are suffering from not having positive mirroring. So I use these words slightly interchangeably, and then in some ways they also have their own unique definition, but there's interchangeable use of the word emotional attunement and emotional mirroring. How it's slightly different is that emotional mirroring could literally mean physically mirroring another person. If you go to a restaurant and you look at two people in relationship and they're sitting at a table, and one person, folds his or her arms, another person is, or sometimes a person leans their head on their hand, you'll notice the other person instinctually, without even thinking, will do the same thing. So if one person shifts their body weight and moves a little bit to the left, the other person does the same thing, shifts body weight in the chair, moves a little bit to the left. And you'll be able to observe, it's very easy to do this at a restaurant, but what happens is that both people are mirroring each other. Now, we also mirror each other through facial expressions, and we mirror each other through emotional responses. So let's pretend if I just won the lottery, and we go, oh my God, gosh, oh, it's amazing, I won the lottery, I got $100,000. This is incredible. If I share that with another person and they are engaged and connected with me and offering emotional mirroring, they're going to match my level of excitement. Their face is going to light up. They're going to feel happy for me. And I'm going to feel happy to share my happiness with them. And so in a way, we're both winning. And there's the word attunement then means is that it's a cycle. It's happening back and forth. This is happening through body language. When I jump up and down and wave my hands and I say, I won the lottery, I won the lottery. And then the other person also is jumping up and down saying, oh my gosh, you won, you won, you won. We are mirroring each other, and the process that's taking place back and forth, that's what's called emotional attunement. If you're in a relationship where there is a lack of emotional attunement and your emotional needs are not getting met, that also means you're not getting enough positive emotional mirroring in your life. So I gave that big setup, I gave that premise. If we're talking about tools and tips and skills, tools to use in your tool bag, one way to break the cycle and to begin to counter staying stuck in the attachment trauma is to realize that you are hungry, you are starving for positive emotional mirroring. And you need to find some friends, you need to find a group of people, you need to find an organization, you need to find a community. Perhaps you already have some other additional loving family members who are able to really see you and really sit with you and enjoy you for being you. And if you do not have this, then that's your homework assignment, that you must go out into this world, and even if you can't find them right away, you need to begin to find some other people who, and I say this metaphorically, but when you win the lottery, they're just as excited and joyous about the fact that you've won the lottery. And they are able to join you in that place of jumping up and down and smiling and nodding and saying, yes, you won the lottery, good for you, that's so exciting. I hope this is helpful. To recap, a summary, we're talking about the struggle to stay stuck is more complicated and not about your inability to, quote unquote, just move on. We can't move on because we lose ourselves. We're engaged in this trauma reenactment. We do not have access to an inner resource that gives us the agency to move forward, and we are then reinforcing it by engaging the learned tolerance to be stuck in relationships where our emotional needs will not be met, will never get met, and where we will just keep looping in this place of discouragement and keep looping in this place where we lose our sense of self. Lastly, same thing I've said before, empathy to you, anyone who's in this situation. It is so painful, and there is hope, there is a way to break this pattern. Some of that way is what I've mapped out on this video. Keep doing your healing work. Stay on the path. Stay committed to your process. It is tiring, it is daunting, it is confusing, and you wake up the next day, you take a breath, and you keep going. You continue to expand your consciousness. You continue to learn about the neuroscience, the neurobiology, the neurophysiology of relationships and attachment. You allow yourself to, you educate yourself to learn about attachment styles and attachment injuries and the nature of trauma, and you educate yourself on how to work with the body. You work with the felt sense in the body, and that's going to be your saving grace. Working with the sensation in the body is going to ground you and is going to be the instrument that you use to gauge the range of when you're in a stronger sense of self and when you become dissociated or fragmented and you're not in your own resource. Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. I'm so thankful that I'm receiving a number of comments frequently about how beneficial the videos are, and I just want to say thank you so much. It means it's very inspiring and encouraging for me to continue on with the videos. If you would like to see more videos coming up, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you want to learn more about me, you can at alanrobarge.com. I do work with clients on a consultation basis of one-on-one consultation to acknowledge where you're at and what skills that you might need to learn. If that interests you, you can learn more at alanrobarge.com. And then finally, there is a Facebook group of like-minded people who resonate with these ideas. It's a group of wonderful, lovely people who are very insightful and intelligent and value dialogue and value conversation. And that's the whole point of that Facebook group, is to share some ideas. So if you want to join the Facebook group, please do. It is, I will include, it's called The New Love Addiction on Facebook. I will include the URL so that you can join. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.